Thank you for coming, James. We're going to discuss an important transit today that happened when you were quite young. So between the age of 18, 19, and 20, you had a transiting Uranus square your natal Uranus. And that indicates a time where, you're growing up and it's quite a formative period where you probably experience a lot of new life situations and you're confronted with a new reality. And with Uranus, the principle of freedom is paramount. So, with Uranus touching its own natal placement in a chart, freedom and the urge to realize freedom emerges quite prominently. So, there might be a bit of tension involved as well. So, how did you experience that at this age?
Oh yeah, freedom was the key word. This was the seeding of my lifelong prioritization of freedom. During my childhood period, I was subject to my parents' decisions and being young and so on. And then I had left school. I went to university and I left immediately. I just could not allow any restriction in my life at all. And I read books like Jack Kerouac and other mind expanding books at that time. And that filled me with this sense of wanting to be on the road, always on the move. School was out. I'm no longer subject to anyone stopping me from doing what I wanted to do. Um, my parents, particularly, I left home immediately. A lot of people stay on a bit longer and they finish their university years and so on. I just took the first opportunity to leave home and I was pretty much on the road, leaving university, penniless and so on. It's a wonderful experience. So freedom, absolutely freedom, and energy. I mean, I was extraordinarily energetic. I could do anything I chose to do.
Mm. Okay. And would you relate this concept of freedom that you experienced to a certain awakening as well?
Yes, the on the level of conscious awakening, I think the freedom that I had to read whatever I wanted to read was given to me because previously I had to read school textbooks and so on. I didn't have an appetite to read more than that. But given that choice, then the choice that I made was to read philosophers. Basically, I didn't have any spiritual awakening at that time, but I did have a real appetite to read philosophers that gave a totally different take on life. Um, John Steinbeck, Hermann Hesse, as I've said, Jack Kerouac, and the existentialists as well. I read around spirituality. I mean, I knew what Buddhism taught and what Sufism was, so I read around the topic without thinking that was for me. So more intellectual freedom, and then in terms of um, freedom to move, I just did what I did and moved around a lot.
Mhm.
James,
Hmm.
yes. So James, you mentioned intellectual freedom, and because it is a position that square Uranus, I wondered if there were a friction with maybe other type of maybe intellectual literature or anything that has to do with that was going against maybe that sense of freedom. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, there was friction because I was a very committed mathematician. I had a delightful relationship with my topic at school. Mathematics just gave me such a clear, clean mind. And mathematics is based on the fact that this is true, that is not. It's definitive. And I was reading these books and they were saying, well, who knows what is true? I mean, Hermann Hesse particularly was just saying it could be this, it could be that, nobody knows. And that level of philosophy was in distinct counter distinction between this and mathematics, you know. And I think I needed that. I'd been blindfolded or blinkered into believing that there were truths and facts in the world, and I was soon to learn that that was mistaken. There are none.
Mhm. So, in that discovery, would you say that your creativity also developed?
Slowly, I think I was very deeply entrained. You you can't imagine how entraining my father is. He he decided what he wanted to do and did exactly the same thing every day for 40 years, you know, and for me to just notice that was a powerful influence. So breaking away from that blinkered way of life was a huge deal for me. And for me to realize that I had the power of creativity, that took quite a different process. I can't say that I became very creative. I started to write songs and poems, and they were all crap, you know. And but I did try. I did try to awaken the creative side. I was a songwriter immediately. I bought a guitar, but earlier than that, and I started to write songs immediately. So there's that. And
Mhm.
eventually I got to be a good writer of songs, later. So it's the seeding of it all, really. Then,
Yeah. Yeah, that speaks to me as well because knowing your later development and your involvement with music and dance and writing and reading, clearly this creativity seed was part of this greater evolution as well. That shaped most of your future life actually. So how would you say it was the beginning of this greater evolutionary process?
yes, it was. It was the seed of all of this, and like my sister made it really clear that I couldn't dance and I shouldn't try. It's an offense for me to try to dance. So that was a very strong influence, and so I thought I couldn't dance, and I, creativity was disdained in my house. You did things the way they were done before, and that's the right way to do things. My father was that dictatorial in his philosophy. So for me, just to be free of that influence, that was the first stage, and to notice the people I was drawn to. I was drawn to the weird and wonderfuls, the hippies and the evangelical guys that were roaming around the university campuses trying to convert people to Christianity. I listened to everyone as long as they were weird and they were saying something controversial and potentially offensive. Those were the people I listened to.
Mm.
And I left university immediately. No, I don't like this. I'm not doing it. And I went back to tell my parents after the first term that I'm leaving university, and they said, "Well, no, you're not allowed to. You got to stay on and do the first year at least, surely." So okay, and I sat about doing nothing for 2 terms. Getting drunk at lunchtime after five-a-side football. You know, I I could do anything I want. I was free, and I did, and then I explored everything. I don't think I got into drugs though, actually. I was a bit nervous of that. That seemed to be far too far out. But I remember singing Dylan and Cohen at Friday night parties when I was drunk quite often. That's the thing to do. It was fun.
Mhm. Okay, thank you. I think you've laid out quite obviously how this urge for freedom shaped your behavior and the development of your identity, and also how it initiated a larger process that took shape much later in your life, actually.
Sure. I mean, let,
And
let
I
me just
was
say that, sorry, I'll just say this. I don't think I ever spent one night in my father's home again.
Wow.
That's something, isn't it? Yeah. Sorry, Laura,
Yeah.
what were you saying?
just wanted to say that thank you for the reminder of this transit, because that would definitely do it, to have a sibling telling you that you're not able to dance and going into the process of becoming a dance teacher is very much Uranus squaring Uranus to me.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. She could not have given me a better motivation than to become a dance teacher than to tell me I can't do it. It's like the Taurus mindset just doesn't take refusal very well.
Mm. Yeah,
All right.
unleash the rebel.
Yeah. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Uranus square Uranus, the waxing square. The urge for freedom truly makes itself known. At around age 21, transiting Uranus squares natal Uranus. This waxing square marks the crossing of an important threshold as we enter adulthood. Recognized as an individual capable of making their own decisions and pursuing their own path. Uniqueness and conformity are in a tug of war during this time. While we feel imbued with youthful confidence to distinguish ourselves, express our unique talents, and embark on our path assertively, we also sense the constraints of social conformity closing in on us. The tension evoked by this square either forcefully suppresses our uniquely personal creative drives, or sketches the beginning outlines of a truly independent person. Whereas until now, typically, we have been subject to parental control, we are suddenly awakened to a whole new dimension of freedom and self-determination, which can be both wonderful and terrifying. Isn't it great to choose what to eat and where to live, what time to come home and whom to be with? We can do all sorts of new things and be as irresponsible as we like. Yet we have lost our safety net and are very likely to have to deal with the temptations of sex, drugs, and rock and roll on a whole new level without much guidance and support. Now, and from now on, we need to pay for the food we eat and the room where we sleep, cope with unwanted pregnancies, unemployment, and bad company, and, without sufficient preparation, face up to very difficult decisions that can so easily set us on the wrong life path. Freedom is not without its own terrors. This time is usually the first major life challenge for many youngsters and can be shocking and demoralizing, especially since our inclination to seek and take advice is at an absolute minimum. Career, home, relationship, and core beliefs are central to our identity and are all likely to come into play this time. The central life questions, who am I? What am I to do? Shout loud, yet largely go unanswered. Fortunately, Uranus is fast, energetic, and rather emotionally insensitive, loving to demonstrate as life's driving force the trial and error principle. If our life is a complete mess, no matter. We can change it, then change it again and again until normalcy reemerges. And usually this process is great fun and very exciting.